Hi, my name is Kate Malberger. I've been teaching quilting classes for several years, and one of the most frequently asked questions that I get is, how should I quilt my quilt top? So my plan is to provide some free videos to show you the process that I work through when machine quilting my quilts. I need to stress that this is not the only way to do it. There are many, many different ways, but this is the way through the years that I have found works for me. I hope you learned something helpful. Okay, the very first step in the machine quilting process is to make sure you do a good job basting your quilt layers, your backing, your batting, and your quilt top. I'm going to use this table runner today to demonstrate the process I use for basting my quilt layers. And my next step is to cut my backing and batting large enough so that I can go ahead and baste these three layers together. Okay, so I have cut my backing fabric, pressed it. I usually try to put a little bit of spray starch on the front side, just so that this surface is smooth and it will run through the sewing machine flat surface more easily. Um, then you want to put this backing fabric face down on your table. Actually, you can use any flat surface. Kitchen islands are sometimes nice because they're up higher if they're big enough. This is my dining room table just because the lighting is better in here for the video. Some people are fortunate enough to have a big cutting surface in their sewing rooms. They can do it there. The nice thing is if your table is high, it will be easier on your back to do this whole process. So I have this laying out here fairly flat, and this is the piece of fabric. This is the step where if we don't get this nice and flat, this could cause problems when machine quilting. That backing fabric could bunch up on you. So I just use masking tape, and I start at one side and just gently press it. I don't want to stretch this, but I want to make sure that it's flat and put a piece of tape right across from the first piece I put in here. And I'm going to continue working down the quilt this way, 6-7 inches apart. And again, just smoothing it out so that it is nice and flat. And I'll keep working down through both of these sides. It's nice if you have a buddy to do this because your buddy can stand here and you can stand here, and it goes a lot faster. Once I get these two sides done, I'm going to do the same thing for this side and the other end of the quilt. And then that backing will be ready to go. Okay, as you can see, I've finished taping down all 4 edges of my quilt backing. And now I'm ready to lay my batting on top of that. As you can see, I have placed the batting on top of my backing fabric and just gently smoothed it out. This layer does not have to be taped. We will be pin basting this once we put the quilt top on top of it. It's the backing fabric that can shift on you, so we wanted to make sure that was secure with the tape. The batting I have used for this project is an 100% cotton batting because I want to make sure that my table runner lays nice and flat on the table and that things don't get knocked over when sitting on top of it. So this is going to be a fairly flat quilt with 100% cotton batting. It's great for machine quilting. My next job is to put the quilt top on top of the batting, and hopefully I've measured good enough that it fits on top of this batting. All right, I have placed my quilt top, centered it on top of the batting, and then just gently smoothed it out. I don't want to stretch it. Just want to make sure that it's laying nice and flat, start in the center, and just kind of smooth things out. Next thing I want to do is use my safety pins and go ahead and start in the center, and every 4 or 5 inches, some people use the size of their fist to decide how far apart they can place the safety pins. And I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll talk about the next step. So I've finished safety pin basting through all 3 layers of my quilt. Each safety pin does go through all 3 layers and will help hold that together while you're machine quilting. I just have one final step to do, and that is to anchor these edges so that as I sew around that edge, they'll be nice and flat. The pins I use for anchoring the outside edges are pretty strong pins. You don't want to use your very fine pins that you use for piecing. It would tend to bend them, but these are pretty sturdy and they can easily be used to hold those outside layers together, and they come out much easier than safety pins. Because the first thing I'm going to do when I go to my sewing machine with this quilt is to sew a 1/4 inch in around the outside edge, and that will hold my layers together. This is not something that everyone does or prefers, but this is a technique that I have found tremendously helpful. I would highly recommend having the first thing you sew be the outside layers together. That's the first thing I do when I go to the machine, but before that we have to take all of the tape off, and then we are finished. That's it for my machine quilting basting technique. I do want to say though that I use this process for all of my quilts that I machine quilt, from miniature quilts on up to king size quilts. I've just had so much success with this, and it's eliminated a lot of the problems that I was having when I first started machine quilting. So I hope you find it helpful, and good luck finishing up all those quilting projects. Have a great day.